Hey everybody, it's me again, Trina from Life's a Blog. I hope you all had a great week, and interestingly enough, it has been freezing here in Ontario, and I'm just waiting for a new season to arrive, and hopefully February 2nd that groundhog will give us a positive review. Anyway, again, this season of my life is almost done. 2 more days. 2 more days before I move out and into a new home. It's not really a dramatic ending, not a collapse, just a closing chapter that I'm really excited about. And you know, this week I wrote a letter, and I thought I needed to write it. One of those final goodbye letters. I even thought to drop it off, like I was leaving for something good. Then it hit me. I'm not dying, I'm moving. And you know, that really matters because you just gotta let go of the past. So what I did, I just took that letter and burnt it just in case that inclination of dropping it off would happen again. So I just thought, just burn it, let it burn and let it go. You know, because moving forward doesn't require closure, conversations. Emotional autopsies are one of those last attempts to be understood. Sometimes it just requires walking out the door with what you learned and not dragging the past with you. And for a long time, I stayed focused on understanding, and probably the last 6 years. Understanding people, understanding dynamics, understanding why certain partnerships felt so draining, so one-sided, so heavy. And you know, I think of a time where I read a note from somebody and they said, nobody just understands our love. And at that time, and this is how much I've grown, at that time, I kind of tried to understand it. Because if someone's going to say that, then there had to be something in there that was special or unique or some kind of a fire, a passion. And then as I watched that nobody understands our love scenario unfold, it was years of generational trauma and bullying and ostracizing and black sheep hurting. And I realized that, yeah, nobody does understand your love because that's just not love. That's abuse. That's control. And it's something that has probably been my greatest lesson of the last few years, is that I had different roles, different stories, but it was all the same pattern. And that's what finally clicked. I mean, they weren't isolated situations. They were variations of the same lesson. 2 of my partners, it wasn't this some tawdry romance from a Hallmark novel where we're going to get back together and live happily ever after. No, there was addiction. There was control on my end. There was so many factors that it just didn't include the word love, because love is patient and love is kind. And each one of these incidences that happened in the last few years, including professional and this landlord situation, showed me what happens when alignment is missing, when effort isn't mutual, when accountability isn't optional, when boundaries are treated like inconveniences instead of requirements, and then you become the devil when you set boundaries. The common thread wasn't the people that were in my life. It was what I tolerated while trying to make things work. And you know, that's a hard thing to say out loud because it's all about me. I kept gravitating towards people who required more explaining and more patience and more self-abandonment than they were willing to offer in return. And I told myself, like, that was connection, but that's not connection. It wasn't. It was just anxiety. It was my nervous system mistaking familiarity for safety and tiny bits of effort for love. And that's the part we don't talk about enough. When you've lived in imbalance long enough, probably all your life, calm can feel boring. boy, the last few months has been boring, and consistency can feel suspicious, and peace can feel unfamiliar. So you lean toward what keeps you activated, not what keeps you grounded. And every one of those relationships that I've encountered in the last 6 years taught me something. My ex showed me that shared effort is not optional. My partner showed me that unclear roles and loose structures eventually collapse. My landlord showed me the cost of staying quiet to keep the peace. My ex-husband showed me how easy it is to ignore red flags when you want the story to end differently. And none of these were mistakes. It was just factual data being thrown at me from some higher power, I assume. And the lesson wasn't about fixing them, it was about rebuilding trust in myself, trusting my body when something felt off, trusting my instincts without needing proof, trusting that I don't need to work harder to earn basic respect. And that's where I am now, not looking back, not rehashing, not chasing clarity from people who already showed me who they were. I will never, ever say that they didn't understand my love, or to anybody else that nobody understood our love, or our connection, or our partnership. No, it was right there in front of everybody's eyes. I was putting the blindfolds on for a very long time, though. And one thing I've learned now is that I really lacked self-trust. That trusting your gut, even though I have it tattooed on my wrist, time and time again, I just did not listen. And this is how you can start rebuilding self-trust. A few tips that I think I've sat back and I've wrote about as I'm growing and learning and starting this new journey, and what I don't want in my life and what I do want in my life. And the biggest thing is trusting myself and trusting my instincts, that I never get into these situations again. So I'd say number one would be stop overriding your first no. If your body hesitates, that's a sign. Self-trust rebuilds when you stop negotiating with your own discomfort. There's this young girl, my daughter's friend, and she's just the sweetest of the sweet. But she's kind of a little boy crazy now. And, a couple of times she's looked out to me for advice, and this gentleman is not texting her back immediately and taking a couple days. And I'd say, no, that just doesn't sound like he's the one for you, because, 99% of the people have their phones available to them. And especially if he has a business, he's got his phone readily available. And, he can just say via voice to text, I can't talk to you right now. I'll call you when I can. So she said the first no to me, but then she started second guessing it. And well, maybe he is busy and maybe he's this. And no, no, no. He's just not that into you. And then number two, take notice where your energy leaks. Notice who leaves you tired and anxious or second guessing yourself. Distance yourself from drains is not cruelty. It's actually good to do that, because we're all meant as human beings to rise up and to grow and to feel that joy and happiness. Exactly the way I feel when I drive down to Lambton Shores. My heart lifts. Everything lifts. And I just think that we as a society, friendships, relationships, romantic partnerships, whatever, we're constantly second guessing ourselves when it comes to our relationships. And, you'll spend some time with someone and you're absolutely exhausted. And if you sit back and you audit why you've left and you're exhausted, then you may realize that this relationship, friendship, what have you, is just not serving your greater good. And 3, this is the big one, I think, is matching actions to words every time. Believe their behavior. Full stop. This is how you retrain yourself to stay anchored in reality. It doesn't matter if you're spending the next 3 years alone. If you're going to meet somebody and be in a romantic relationship, watch the actions. If you're going to get into a partnership with someone, watch the actions. Don't listen to the words. The words are always grandiose. And they'll always be geared towards what serves them best. The actions shows you what serves you as a partnership and us. You know, I've taken a couple drives down in Port Franks and I've had to pass through the town that I used to live in. And, it makes me sad because there he is sitting all mad alone, just the way I found him 5 years ago. And it makes me sad, but, choices were made, and that's kind of like, that's the actions. That is the action. He wanted that. And that's okay. I don't want that. And that was my lesson learned there. And number 4, slow your yes down. Urgency kills. Give yourself time before committing to people or plans or promises or business relationships. I think if I would have stepped back a year ago and really looked at the picture in its whole totality, I probably wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in now. 2025 was a huge financial drain from a romantic partnership and through a business. And I should have slowed that yes down and really looked and watched the actions, watch everything that was happening around me, and then realized this is not the time. And number 5, name what you want before engaging. If you don't define your own terms, you'll accept someone else's by default. And I think we're all very privileged in having a voice and the ability to say what we want and what we'll tolerate and where the boundaries lie when it comes to having any sort of relationship with us. I think few of us do it, and then we get caught in a trap or we try to overbelieve people's intentions. Again, listening to words over the actions. And I think you have to really know what you want before getting into that next season of your life when it comes to other people. And number 6, stop romanticizing potential. Potential is not a contract. You got to choose the person, the situation in the present, what's consistent and what's sustainable. That is so important because romanticizing potential is really you playing a trick on yourself. And number 7, practice small acts of self-loyalty daily. Leave when you're tired. Speak up when something feels off. These little choices compound. And, again, like bringing up something that is bothering you to someone that truly loves you. The action isn't going to be retaliation or quitting or texting somebody else. It's going to be full on, I want this, you want this, let's work on this sort of ideal. And just be kind to yourself. Like lately, what I do when I feel anxious or really lonely here, I just hop in my car and go for a drive because it's very soothing. I go look for snowy owls, which I have yet to find one. And I just don't stand around situations where I don't want to be in. So I'm just being loyal to myself in the situation where I'm at right now. And I kind of put people off full stop and say, we'll discuss this another time. And number 8, separate anxiety from intuition. Anxiety is loud and frantic, and intuition is quiet and steady. And you have to learn the difference by slowing down. Anxiety, when I have anxious moments where I'm feeling out of balance and I'm ready to do something that I'll absolutely regret, I now took the advice from my therapist, and I put my wrists under ice cold water, even though I can't do cold plunge. Tried it, can't do it. But I will put my wrists under ice cold water, and it does trigger the brain to think about other thoughts and to balance the chemicals in your brain so the anxiety lessens more. And your intuition, if you listen to your intuition, you really have to step back and really concentrate on your intuition. And then you see things for what they are and how they could be. And it's just a slower pace, what your intuition teaches you. And number 9, create clear boundaries and enforce them the first time. You know, the goal in any relationship isn't repeated explanation. It's observing who respects them without resistance. And when I look at healthy relationships, and I'm going to tell you about a very healthy gentleman that's 90 years old in a few moments, but when I look at the story he tells, and I see that he's a very healthy individual, not only physically in mind, but the way he approaches people and interacts with people and how he treats people. And I know that he had very clear boundaries as well, because I worked with him many years ago. But that's my next story. And 10, prove to yourself that you can walk away. Self-trust grows when you know you won't abandon yourself to keep something alive. And you know those moments in the last season of my life where I said, pack your stuff, I'm taking you home. No, you've made your point, this business is over. And I'm moving out of here and I'm taking you to the tenancy board. I've walked away. I've walked away with boundaries. My actions are very clear. And don't step on me again. And I will never abandon myself again with people who just don't respect who I am as a person. And I have a lot of faults. Don't get me wrong. We are not without fault as human beings, and we make mistakes and we make errors. But character is one thing we either choose to stay as, or we choose to change our character and grow. I guess 6 years ago, I would think that I was all in the right. But no, I look at certain instances with my breakup with my ex-husband, and I realize now that I can't just blame it on being batshit crazy, but I can look at it and go, I was an absolute control freak that wanted just to run this partnership to better grounds, him getting rehab and cleaning himself up. But that wasn't my choice. That wasn't my duty. It wasn't my responsibility. My responsibility was to take ownership of my involvement and what I needed to do in this situation. In that case, I didn't leave him because of what he did. I left because he refused to get rehab. Point blank, I was ready to take every ounce of money and invest in rehab and go get a job and support the two of us. But the answer was a hard no. And where I went wrong was I couldn't control the situation, so I went absolutely crazy and I spiraled. And I take ownership for that. I can't say that was his fault. No. Was the breakup? It was absolutely all this blindsidedness that I had to go through. But me going batshit crazy, that's on me because I was losing control of something I loved very, very much. But I just couldn't handle it. And I think I've learned a lot about control. I think, in this situation where this person says they don't understand our love, I think that was meant to happen because I looked at that and I saw it very clearly as abuse, but then, and controlling. And I had to step back and look at my situation and go, you know what? That was really controlling of me. Like, I lost control of the situation and I just buried myself in the ground. So at the end of the day, choose yourself and you can walk away and never look back. And all these steps are meant for you to be aligned with yourself. And the most important factor is to feel safe again. It's been a very long time since I felt safe. And my heart is hoping that this next portion of my life will bring me the safety that I need to feel, because I've got a long road ahead of working and building myself, my business up again. And I have got an amazing team. I've rounded up a lot of great people. And I think it's just going to be a good thing. My gut is telling me, my intuition is saying that it's going to be a good thing. And I really hope so, because I've worked very hard for this. I'm not going to say I deserve it, but I am going to say I've worked really hard and I've learned all the hard lessons that I needed to learn in order to get to this point in my life. Now I'm trying to think of a business name. And instead of Martha Stewart Inc., I think it's going to be Trina Stewart Inc. So this excerpt may bore a few people. That's okay, because I feel that I want to share it. So a few months ago, probably about 2 months ago, I got this email. And this gentleman named Barry Abelson, writing me in all caps, he says, "Hi, Trina. Just saw you in the magazine. Do you want to have coffee? Barry." And I smiled. And I wrote him back and I'm like, wow, blast from the past. What a absolutely wonderful surprise. Of course I'd love to have coffee with you. I have thought of you fondly many times in the last 19 years, and I hope that life has treated you well. You name the place, as I'm in New Hamburg, but I'll gladly come to Waterloo. Wednesday or Thursday at 10 works for me. I'm looking so forward to seeing you. So we met, and I had the wrong shoes on. I had this mad blister on the back of my foot, and I was trying to hide it when I walked in. And he stood up and he gave me the biggest bear hug you'd ever imagine. We were at this quaint little cafe in downtown Waterloo called Cafe 22, and it's a cute place. And he told me that him and his wife go there every Tuesday to have coffee. It's their ritual. And we sat there for over 2 hours and talked about life and shared what's been going on in our life since we last saw each other. And it's funny, I told him that that I arrived in Ontario and I was 26 years old, and I got hired at this place where he was a board of director. And the first time meeting him, I had to drive down to the Hilton Hotel in the airport in Toronto. And when I got there, I was taking minutes to the meeting. Then we had lunch, and real fancy lunch with all the different types of utensils. And probably had I not watched Pretty Woman, maybe I wouldn't have been so greatly affected about the utensils, but I sat there and looked at them stupidly. And I looked up and there he was, and he was like, "Show me the fork." And I'm like, thank God. Thank you for you, whoever you are. And after that, I was just a mail clerk at this business, and this guy that was running this certification program would teach me all kinds of things about Windows and the operating system and the database that they used or he created. And then one day he just up and quit. And everyone was wondering, well, who knows everything about this program? And everybody's eyes, the board meeting shifted at me. And all of a sudden I got this great big career. And I was still teaching myself Microsoft Word. And it was kind of cool because those 4 years at that association, Barry was the one that always helped me understand everything about vinyl windows. And there'd be times where, one of the contractors or dealers would really make me feel stupid because I was at a loss to explain things. And I'd phone him up and say, okay, you got a half an hour for me to explain this? And then he took me to a testing lab, and I finally learned about the A, B, and C's and the energy ratings and everything like that. I think it was through Canadian Window and Door Manufacturers Association, but that's neither here nor there. He taught me everything I knew about vinyl windows. And when he retired, I was very sad to see him go. And it was at that point where he opened up his little briefcase and he goes, Trina, I have this email that you sent me when I retired. And he said, I kept it because it was just so sweet. And he goes, no, here, I kept 2 Christmas cards that you sent me as well. And that really touched me. I thought, man, that's a guy with character. Like, he keeps all this stuff. And that touched my heart. It was like, wow. Like, he goes, yeah, took a photocopy for you so you can keep it too. And I'm like, I am going to keep it because if it meant that much to you, it certainly means that much to me. And then we started talking, and he explained to me that he had a lot of ups and downs in his life, but, he's a very successful businessman. And when he retired, he gave his 3 top employees the business and said, here you go. This is your future retirement. And I thought, wow, what a guy. So anyways, he told me he wrote 2 books and they got them published. And I think it's just published within his family, but he got them published nonetheless. And did I tell you he was 90 years old? He's 90 years old. You would never imagine he was 90 years old. And he said he was going to send them to me. And true to his faith, that those books arrived at my door days later in the mail. So I read them. And the one that he wrote that I really loved was If I Were King, Part 2, because he had already wrote a Part 1. And they were all things about today's day and age and his opinions on, the Postal Service and the politics. And it was just a really interesting read coming from his frame of mind. And as I was reading it, I could really hear his voice in my head as I was reading it. So it was a pretty cool read by somebody that you know personally. And the only reason he created it was because he doesn't know anything about his great-grandparents, his grandparents. And he thought, wouldn't it be neat if I wrote something for my grandkids, my great-grandkids, that they can read about what was happening in the times and what I thought about the situations what's happening. And I thought, that's a pretty cool idea. And I'm actually contemplating doing that myself, even though I'm not very politically inclined. But I just thought that was a great idea. So anyways, he wrote me and he said, didn't get a message from you. Did you receive my books? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just finishing it. I was going to write you. Yes. And I want to meet for coffee. And I said, I sent him the Coldplay video with Dick Van Dyke. No, not Dick. Yeah, I think it's Dick Van Dyke. All My Love. And I go, this is kind of like the summary of your book. And I said, it's just so special. And yes, let's meet for coffee. So we met again, another 2-hour meeting. And we were talking about someone that we knew at the board of directors meetings. And I'm like, he actually taught me a great lesson too. I said, I was standing at the printer and he walked up to me and I think I nudged him or something. I said, oh, I'm sorry. And he goes, Trina, he goes, why do you always say you're sorry? And I said, well, I don't know, I guess because I'm sorry. And he goes, Trina, the only time you ever really have to say you're sorry is when you're truly sorry. Flicking me like that does not constitute an I'm sorry. And Barry goes, and he goes, and I go, no, that's actually really good advice. I go, because if we're saying I'm sorry all the time, we just don't know what we're really being sorry for. And having true sincerity with your sorries, I think, is very important. He's like, okay, point well taken. So anyways, we discussed everything from our past to the book, to my thoughts on his book, to thoughts on his opinions in the book. And we also talked about love and we talked about romance. And I said in the book, I said, you said one thing. I said that kind of, taking me aback. I said how you gave your daughter all of your family photos of with your first wife. And he goes, I had the two most amazing loves of my life. He goes, my first wife died of MS, and it was an amazing, amazing relationship. But she died, and I started my relationship with my current wife, who I've been with for the last 40 years. But I felt it was very important to separate that first relationship to the second in order for me to move on and move forward. It's not that I've ever forgotten or don't recognize the love that I had, but this new relationship, as it started and evolved, that's the one I had to work and aspire to. And he goes, every Saturday night we have date night. He goes, 2 glasses of Crown Royal, we'll watch something on TV, then we'll get up, make dinner, dance in the kitchen. And he goes, and then we sit down, we split a bottle of wine. And he goes, it's a lovely date night every Saturday night. And I'm like, wow. And he goes, I don't think I've spent any more than one day away from her. Because when I went away, she always came. I could not imagine my life without her on a daily basis. And I was like, man, that's what I want. And, I was just talking to someone 90 years old and as vibrant, as clear, as active. He could get up off the chair better than I could. I was just wowed about how much life can inspire us by just talking to people that have character and great boundaries and great aspirations in life. Like, I think that's what got him through to be 90. He just, he ran the turkey drive for the Rotary, and he plays squash, and he still plays squash once a week. And I think I kind of aspire to be a woman of character, just like Barry Abelson, because he had 40 kids, and he says, there's some bad seeds in those 40 too. Not 40 kids, but 40 family members. He goes, we've all got those bad seeds. And I'm like, oh yeah, it happens in every family. There's no two ways about it. But the conversation was so inspiring. I thought to bring it into the podcast, because you don't meet many people like that nowadays that can inspire you. And it kind of goes back to where don't allow anything or anyone to drain you. It wasn't a draining 2 hours went by, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to get back to work, Barry. And he's like, yep, I got to get back home too. But I could have probably spent another 3 hours with him. It was just that wonderful. So I'm going to close this off, and this is where I am right now. And I'm not looking back. I'm not going to rewrite history. I'm not going to try to understand things that already showed me the truth. I'm just choosing myself without the apology tour. Self-trust isn't rebuilding in big moments. It's rebuilt in the quiet decisions. The ones where you listen to yourself the first time. The ones where you leave instead of explain. The ones where you stop confusing anxiety with connection. The one where you burn that note before you send it. And I'm not hardened. I'm actually clearer than I've ever been before in my life. And that clarity changes everything. So if this hit something for you, sit with it. You don't have to fix your whole life tonight. It's taken me 6 years. You just have to stop abandoning yourself tomorrow. And you know what? We'll keep going till next time. But I want to thank you for joining me. If you want to subscribe to my podcast, feel free to go over to Spotify. Again, you can always follow me at Life's a Blog CA on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And we'll see you in my new digs next week. Until then, take care.